What's up, guys, and welcome to another Scourge of War video. So, barring any miracles that could happen, I pretty much think that this will probably be my last Scourge of War video. There's very little coming out of the Norbsoft camp. The game just recently passed the 5-year mark, so I don't really think that there's anything more coming for this game. I've already covered every scenario that there is to cover in the game across all the expansions, and of course, we just finished the Le Senjour mod not too long ago. So there's really nothing more for me to do. And really, the only reason I'm making this video is because I wanted to complete my little series that I started a couple of weeks back or a month back or so with uh, some of the defensive tactics and strategies that I use in the game, largely, of course, centered around the fortress, which is kind of the core of my defensive mindset. And in that video, I said I wanted to also do another video covering some of my strategies and tactics on the attack. Um, so that's what this video is going to be, basically covering kind of certain situations and some of the strategies and tactics basically that I use on the attack. So, okay, where to begin with this? So the first thing I need to kind of say is that attacking for me is nothing but a means to an end. I don't go into any scenario looking to see how I can possibly spill the maximum amount of blood. That's never what I'm aiming for. I'm simply trying to win by the most efficient means possible. And largely speaking, as I covered in previous video for the series, it's always easier and more efficient to defend than it is to attack. However, uh, there are lots of scenarios in this game where that simply isn't feasible, or it isn't feasible for the whole scenario. Strictly speaking, there are scenarios where you simply have no choice but to attack. You can't just sit on your ass and defend the entire time. Um, so naturally, I had to develop strategies and tactics for the attack. Uh, Having said that, though, my overall goal is to get in, do what I have to do, and then secure the position and flop over to my defensive tactics as quickly as possible. So there are sort of three maxims or three rules that I follow uh, when it comes to attack. And the first rule is to only attack what you absolutely have to attack, and only use the amount of forces you absolutely need to use in order to get what you need accomplished, in order to basically accomplish what you need to do to get the job done. So what that basically means is most of my attacks tend to be very surgical. Especially in bigger scenarios where you're playing, core or army scenarios, if you flare the whole battle up across your whole line, and especially if you fight the way I do, where largely most of my force is under TC and I'm controlling everything myself. Generally speaking, uh, the more forces you have to control and the bigger the situation gets, the harder it is to control and the harder it is to manage and monitor all of that going on at once. So generally speaking, I try to keep things as small as possible. And that basically boils down to the first rule, which, as I said, is only attack what you absolutely have to, and only with the forces necessary. Don't use any more forces than you need to, of course, and certainly don't use any less forces than you need to. That wouldn't make any sense. The second rule is well, to sum it up briefly, I guess I'll borrow a quote from Confederate General Nathan Bedford Forrest, which was simply "get there firstest with the mostest." And what that really boils down to is to get to that position first with the most men. All right. So if you have to launch an attack on a position, you want to basically hit it with overwhelming force. You want the attack to you want the approach, the engagement, and the securing of the position to happen as quickly as possible. And the best way to ensure that you're going to do that is simply by numbers attack with a much more superior force than your opponent is defending with, um, which is a pretty straightforward rule or maxim, so to speak. It pretty much speaks for itself. You have more men, you hit them with more men, you're going to win. Uh, and the third rule is never take by force something you can take by maneuver. And what I mean by that is if you can take a position by outmaneuvering the enemy out of that position, either by surrounding them or flanking them or doing something that makes the position untenable for the enemy or basically traps them so that you're basically able to take the position through maneuver rather than just headlong you know uh, charge or just straight through with superior numbers and just overwhelm the position. You always want to do that. Uh, you always want, if you can avoid casualties on and take the position you're trying to take just through maneuver. That's certainly the easiest way to do it. If you can take an objective, and most of the objectives in this game are worth more points just for being objectives than you would ever get through combat alone. So combat is merely a means to an end, and the easier you can get to any of these objectives uh, and secure them, the better it is because you won't lose points um, to casualties. You'll simply gain points from the objectives. So those are basically my three rules on the attack, and just to repeat them again. Um, Only attack what you absolutely have to, uh, and with only the amount of force you need to use to get the job accomplished. Uh, get there firstest with the mostest, which just means if you're going to attack a position, attack it with superior forces, whether through superior troop quality, superior numbers, superior combined arms, whatever. Just make sure whatever it is the enemy has, you have more of it. And the third rule, of course, is what I just covered: is never take through force what you can take through maneuver. So those are my basic philosophies on the attack. And in any scenario that I've ever played in this game where I've had to be on the attack, those three rules have always served me well. So real quickly, let me just bring the sound back up here. Okay, there we go. So now we have some volume. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is just a simple brigade level charge. Just you're taking a whole brigade and you just want to ram it down the enemy's throat. This is one of my favorite tactics to use when I just want to overwhelm a position with superior numbers. So here we're playing the Eagle Triumphs here, which is one of the scenarios I always use to do these type of videos because there's just not a lot of enemy near us. So we're on Gengolf's brigade right here. So one of the things I just want to point out here is that in a lot of these scenarios, especially bigger ones like this, generally speaking, your officers will start off on take charge. You see the flag is yellow, so the officer is under take charge, so he's not going to do anything. And as long as he's TC'd, all his battalions will not do anything either, as long as there's no enemy units nearby to cause them to react to the presence of enemy units. But the battalions themselves are not on TC. You can see the flag is off for all his battalions. So the way I execute brigade level charges has to do with kind of a quirk of the interface when it comes to Scourge of War Waterloo. And this is one of the things I discovered that really nobody knew about because before Scourge of War Waterloo in the Civil War series and the Scourge of War Gettysburg series, This didn't work. This is purely a quirk of the Waterloo interface. So one of the things I'll do is, let's say there's an enemy brigade at kind of at this hedgerow or in this field right here, and we outnumber them. One brigade will do it. We just want to hit them with full force as fast as possible and run them off. So if you were to take Gengal's brigade here and just say, all right, we want to march the enemy out, you know, oh, I'm sorry, I have the game paused. We want to march our brigade out and hit this enemy headlong, right, into a charge. So we move the officer out. We then select a formation. Normally, I use the tightest interval of the column by division formation, and the whole brigade will begin moving. Now, if you notice, all these units are still under AI control, right? The brigade commander is TC'd, but all his units are under AI control. So I'm just going to pause the game here for a second, all right? And go ahead and mute the sound here one more time. Okay, so I can talk about this. Okay. So basically what will happen here is, if there's an enemy brigade out here, the moment any of these units come within engage distance of the enemy brigade out here, you will lose control of them. Because they are under AI controls, you can see I can click on them. They're all under AI control. Only the brigade commander is TC'd. So what will happen is, the moment that these units come within engage range of the enemy units out here, the enemy units will, of course, deploy in a line and start firing on them, but the AI will take over at this point, right? Some of your units may stop to form lines. Some of them may keep moving forward. Some of them may send out skirmishers. The point is the moment they come within engaged distance of any enemy units, your control over the battalions themselves is basically over. Any further commands you try to send them are just suggestions that the AI will almost immediately just discard. Because it's taken over, it's doing its own thing, and this is one of the things that really confuses new players, because they don't understand why they they had control of their men, and then all of a sudden now their men have stopped doing what they wanted them to do. Well, because they never really did have control of their men. The only reason the AI let you have control of the men is because you weren't in range of the enemy. You weren't in range to actually trigger the AI to do anything. So the AI was really just sitting back and saying, "Okay, I'm not needed at this point. Just do whatever it is you're going to do." So you feel like you're in control because you start moving all your men. You select a formation, and uh, you think everything's good, and then they come into engage range, and all of a sudden everything's not the way you thought it was. All of a sudden, you see some of the units start to form lines. Some of them change their destination. Some of them start sending out skirmishers, and before you even know it, you've lost control of the situation, and you don't know why. I'm telling you why. It's because you never had control. You only think you did, because these units are under AI control, right? You see, they're all under AI control. Only the brigade commander is on take charge. What that means is, yeah, you command the brigade commander, and you can send the battalion's orders like we just did to form up an assault column in front of this phantom enemy brigade that we're talking about. But the battalions themselves have their own reaction ranges, and once they're in combat, the AI will take over. And once the AI takes over, the only way to get that control back is to TC the battalions themselves, which is exactly what I do. Uh, and pretty much I do it the moment I set a destination, so that once they do come into, you don't want to wait until you've lost control to reestablish control. You want to set it so that you never ever lose control. All right, so let's unpause the game here, and I'm not going to bother turning the sound on because I keep having to go to that menu. So we'll just unpause the game here, and my men are advancing. So the first thing I'm going to do, once I've set my position, right, I'm clicked on the brigade commander, and I'm going to hit this button right here, TC on all subordinates. As soon as I hit this button, and we'll pause the game one more time here. You'll see now all these battalions are under TC, right? They're all right? They're all under TC. So now the AI cannot interrupt my movement, right? So if we keep going here, right, and I'm just going to advance them, right? I'm just speeding up time here so we get these guys into position. Never mind this. All right, so here they come. And we'll just wait for them to all form up here, right? Okay, so I have now I've set the time back to normal. Let's pause the game again. So now we have an enemy brigade out here, right? Which is, we're either in musket range or we're very close to it, right? And we want to charge them. So now we formed up in assault column, right? Now here is where you have to get good at basically using these two buttons right here, right? So if we want to advance again, right, we want to close the distance. You don't want to charge from here because assuming the enemy brigade is in the field, you don't want to hit. You don't want to charge from here. It's too long a distance to cover. You're going to lose you're going to break into a charge and lose your formational advantage of being in an assault column like this. So what you want to do is you click on the officer. I'm going to unpause the game again. You click on the officer here. Why am I? Oh, I'm already selected on him. My bad. Right. And what you want to do here now, because this is an army scenario, when I click on TC off all subordinates, the brigade commander himself will come off. Right. So the first thing you want to do, right, is TC off all subordinates. Right. And you'll notice they immediately begin moving before I have a chance to do anything. Right. So that's because I'm, relatively speaking, within range of some Prussians out here. I moved a little too close. But we want to charge brigade. So here's what we do. We've TC'd the officer. Now we're going to set it a formation, and we're going to be much closer, right? Set it, and then immediately TC all subordinates, right? So now they're back on TC, and they're moving. That wouldn't have happened if I had, you can see some Prussian forces out here, and my units just reacted to it. That's all. I got too close. But you could see how as soon as I took it off uh, of TC and immediately put it under AI control, it instantly took command of all the units and started doing its own thing with the units. That's how quickly you can lose control of a situation if you're not careful about how you use the AI and how close to the enemy you use the AI. Right? It can quickly spiral out of control. So, I mean, I know how to quickly rectify the situation. So now we're a lot closer to where our phantom enemy brigade is. Now, here's the ticket. If we were in engage distance of the enemy, whether TC'd or not, if we gave these guys no further orders, just because they're in musket range of the enemy, all these units would form line on their own and start shooting. Now, that doesn't mean they're under AI control. That's simply an automatic function. Whether the unit is TC'd or not, you can see they're all TC'd. They're not doing anything because they're not in actual range. But if there was an enemy brigade out here, we would be in musket range of them, and all of these units would automatically form line. So one of the reasons I formed up in assault column back here first was because it was out of musket range, and it brought all our units to basically be in assault column in line like this, rather than however we were set up back here, where we had some units, we were, behind, and we weren't in a line like this. Now, here's the quirk of the interface I spoke earlier of. There are certain functions of the Grog toolbar that work from a brigade command, even if units are TC'd, right? So if a unit is TC'd, generally speaking, it does not respond to brigade level commands. So if let's say I move the brigade commander, right? And he's moving forward, and I want to form a assault column. You'll notice nothing happens. No matter how many times I hit it, nothing happens. Nothing happens because these units are under TC, and they will not respond to brigade level commands. You can only move them manually. In order to get them to in order to select a formation, I would again have to uh, take them off of take charge and then select the formation and then put them on take charge. However, certain functions bypass this, and I make use of this quirk, and it's why some of my attack strategies are some of the most effective in the game, because this quirk of the interface that I'm about to tell you gives you the ability to do things that you really were not meant to be able to do, especially coming from like Scourge of War, Gettysburg, Antietam, those Civil War games. I also have a lot of experience playing them, and you could never do this kind of stuff in those games. Um, what the quirk basically is that, like I said, certain functions of the Grog toolbar work even if the whole brigade is under take charge. And a couple of the most important ones are double quick and charge. Now, some other ones also work, but they're not nearly as essential to my attack strategies as these two are. These are the two money uh, buttons on the Grog toolbar that make a lot of my attack strategies work so well. Double quick and um, charge. Now, I did this initial approach here kind of in steps uh, because I was actually trying to show you the individual steps. If I were really executing an attack, what I would do would be to have marched them up here, not within range of the enemy, formed them up in assault column, right, and then given them an approach basically right up in front of the enemy brigade. I would have basically had them march right up to the enemy brigade, TC'd them just like this. Once they come within musket range, which I can see because on the you can see right up here there is a little targeting display that tells me basically what my closest target is and what their range is. So there's nothing really nearby. The closest target to us is this Prussian unit in Saint Armand here. They're 700 yards away, nothing to worry about. But if there was an enemy brigade out here, in this field here, they would be much closer. The moment on the approach here, the moment that my men came within 150 yards, which is musket range, the maximum range of musket range, I would hit the double quick button. Why am I hitting the double quick button? To close the distance as quickly as possible and minimize how many casualties I'm going to take on the approach, right? So if the enemy forms line and starts firing on me while I'm in assault column, in this game, uh, um, units don't fire from assault column. Assault column is a bayonet formation. If we're going to fire, we would first stop and form line, but we're not trying to do that. This is an objective, for hypothetically speaking. This is an objective. We want to get the enemy off this position and take the objective. So the fastest way to do that is just to overwhelm them with superior numbers and hit them with a whole brigade in the assault column formation. The assault column formation gives you a 15% advantage over if you're charging units that are not in assault column. So if we move up against an enemy brigade that forms line to fire on us, once we do hit them in a melee, in addition to just having superior numbers, we'll have a formational advantage going into the attack. So getting back to what I was saying, as soon as I close to within 150 yards, I'm going to hit this double quick button. Now, as I said, even though I have all my units TC'd, you can see they're all still TC'd. Double quick is just one of those buttons that will work from the brigade commander. So if I'm selected on the brigade commander, it's not supposed to work, but it does. It's just a quirk of the Scourge of War Waterloo interface. I used to think it was just a Grog toolbar thing, but it's not. It's actually just the way the interface works for Scourge of War Waterloo. So if I hit double quick while I'm clicked on the brigade commander as they're marching forward, the whole brigade will immediately start double clicking. Once I come within about 20 to 30 yards of the enemy brigade, I'll break into a charge, right? And I'll start mashing the charge button. So why do I mash the charge button? Most of you playing that are video game players would probably say, Rob, Button mashing is a scrub tactic. Every video game player knows that. I would agree with you for the most part, but not in this instance because mashing the charge button stops a very key kind of flaw from happening. So as I covered in my Fortress video, where I talked about how enemy units will, after either completing a charge or after they lose a target, will stop to reform. And that's because when the AI charges, it simply activates the charge button and just kind of hits it once. When you mash the charge button, you stop that from happening. Right? You instantly select another target and you basically can follow up charge. So without stopping to reform, you just keep charging over and over and over again. And you can either charge until you have cleared all the enemy from the position. If they all go into a retreat or a route, you'll lose the ability to mashing the charge button won't do anything because there's no more viable targets. Or if your units fall below, if they fall below winded. So we're energetic right now. We got at least these are level 5 seasons, so we got at least 2 or 3 good charges in kind of each one of these units. Well, maybe not these guys. They're volunteer. They're not great. Maybe 2 for them. But most of these level 5 units here, you're good for probably 3 charges. The volunteer units are probably good for 2. And you just mash the charge button over and over and over again until you've cleared out the position. And then after that, you can flop over. You've got your position now. You can flop over the defensive, form up in line, set up assault columns in rear, bring up some artillery to secure the position, bring up some cavalry if need be to discourage any counterattacks. Whatever. I covered all of that in the Fortress video. But the point is you attack with overwhelming manpower. Do it quickly, do it efficiently, capture the position, and then flop over to the defensive. So we've captured what we needed to capture, and no more, no less. We've used the forces we need to use to get the job done. After that, we secure the position, bring up the guns, bring up some cavalry, set up the fortress, enforce the engagement distance and formational control that I talked about in the fortress. Bam, we've got our position, we've got our objectives. We can either sit on this, we can move on to another objective, deploy some skirmishes in these hedgerows, whatever we got to do to secure this position and discourage the enemy from trying to counterattack and retake it. And we can now move on to something else without having to monitor this so heavily. So why don't we quickly see if we can actually, and I have never tried this, but let's try and execute an example of this in game. So I'm going to bring the sound back up here, right? And it'd probably take too long on this scenario. So let's get out of this scenario, right? And let's see, what's something I can launch a quick attack on? I should have thought this through more. Okay, good. This is quick. All right, so we're going to go with the King of Westphalia here. Okay, now I'm not going to try and win this scenario here. I just want to show you how I execute these attacks and how I make this work for me. All right, so we're playing Prince Jerome Bonaparte in this scenario here, and it's a divisional scenario. We don't need this. But, okay, so there's an objective right here, right? And we can see a couple of battalions out here guarding it. So there's actually another one here. I just know from playing it, we just can't see them right now. So how would I go about attacking this position, right? So the first thing I would do, our closest infantry brigade here is Soy's brigade. He's got 3,530 men. Should be more than sufficient to overwhelm these 3 battalions here, right? So the first thing I want to do is get them into a position where they can do that. So because we're playing a divisional scenario, only Bonaparte here is on TC. So the first thing we want to do is TC Soy, right? So now he's on TC. Now we can't TC the battalions because we want to move them as a formation, and that you have to have them under AI control to do. So let's move them right out, say over here, right? And we'll form them up in assault column, and I immediately am going to TC them, right? So they will do nothing but follow my orders here. Now, I've set them up far back enough that they cannot come under fire. These units are too far away, but close enough that if they were under AI control, they could react to it and start forming line, or just like you saw before, as soon as I took them off of AI control, they started doing their own thing, and we want to prevent that from happening. So they're heading over. I'm just going to speed up time here and get them over here. Yes, you can see Bowden's brigade getting hammered in front of Lai Hassan. In front of Hugo Mont. Normally I would rescue them, but I'm not going to bother here because I'm just trying to show you an attack. So we'll let Hugo Mont pound away at them here. Okay, so here come our boys. And I'm just speeding up time here, then I actually run it here, guys. So as soon as they form up here, we will slow time back down. Okay, and I'll pause the game again. All right, so now we have our brigade all formed up in assault column in position to strike at these two units here. With 3,500 men, it's almost a certain victory for us. As I said, there's another unit out here, but we're just going to try and hit these two units. And if we do and get rid of them, this other unit will either withdraw, deploy into line and start shooting at us, and we could just hit them again or whatever. But we don't want to. We want to hit these two to really maximize our striking power, right? We know we outnumber these two battalions by a huge amount, right? So how I would execute this right now is I would take, let's unpause the game, right? So the first thing I would do is TC off all subordinates, and that will also take Soy off of take charge, and we'll immediately put him back on take charge. So TC off and TC on. So now he's back under TC, the battalions are not. See how quick that was? So you take it off and then immediately go over here and put the officer back on. Right? So the next thing we want to do is move the brigade forward into the into range to charge the enemy. So we're just going to move him right up to the front here, and you can see now we can have a visual of this 3rd battalion here. So just to make sure we don't have any units that go off hitting it, we're going to strike right here, right? Because the center is right here, and our right is here. So we don't want to go here and have our right be here. We want to be like right here, right? So we're going to march right up here. Yeah, right about, say, here, right? Assault column, and then immediately TC everybody. So now that everybody is TC'd, no matter what, they will not do anything. They will not do what I order them to, because they're under TC now and I have complete control. So we're just marching up, and let's get them. Let's get halfway there. So we're okay. 230. Blah 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 blah. Okay, I'm just counting the yards here. All right, so let's slow down. All right. So as soon as, all right, we're within 150 yards now. Hit the double quick. So now we start running, and as you see, the whole brigade reacts even though they're on TC. And as soon as they come into range here, and charge. Here we go. The whole brigade basically starts charging. These guys didn't, probably because they can't see them, but I'm just mashing the charge button right now. So I'm taking some losses, but you can see we're hitting these guys with an overwhelming force. There's no way. There's not a chance in hell they're going to win this. Boom. Right? And we've also just sent this battalion into another charge, but we don't want to do that, so we're going to click this battalion and have them retreat. The next thing we're going to do, right, is reform the division. So we take the leader, take him off TC, do this, click the assault column, and again TC all officers. So we just hit this battalion with a quick charge. Off they went. We are dealing with these units, but we're regrouping here, and we're just going to march forward and hit this unit again. Now we're out of musket range. Making sure these guard units here are not heading for me. Okay, good. Okay, here we go. So now we're going to advance the columns. Right, again, TC everybody. Well, I was a little slow on that. My bad. So we'll do it again. There we go. I'm just being slow on this, I guess. Regardless, they can stay back here. This is more than enough. And again, we're just going to double click them. And then as soon as they come within range, we're just going to charge again. And break into the charge. And I'm mashing the charge button because the first thing we're going to do is charge the skirmishers. But we will keep right on going. And hit these guys. Now some of my units have broken off and hit the and are hitting this second unit over here, but it's 2 battalions. We'll probably take them. And yeah, we got another battalion joining the fray here. And there we go. Right? So everybody's retreating. There we go. So now the way through to the objective is open, right? So we take our officer, put him on TC, go right for the objective, select a formation, TC, and everybody will keep moving. Speed up time. And we've got the objective. They just charge it on their own. There they go. They'll form line automatically because there's units within firing range. So, as I said, if you don't give them any further orders once they reach their position, that's automatic. They'll just form line. So, there we go. Let's pause the game. So, well, what time is it? So this scenario starts at 12:30. So within 15 minutes, we have cleared off 3 battalions and taken the objective. And it's an hour-long scenario. So that's kind of one example of how I make an attack. That's just brute force, right? Just overwhelming the enemy with superior numbers. And this quirk of the interface makes it possible to do these types of attacks and kind of always maintain control. It takes some practice. I was being a little sloppy here. Bear in mind, I haven't played this game in like 3 months, so I'm a little sloppy. But normally I'm right on top of that. And even so, it still worked out exactly kind of how I wanted it to. We've got the objective. We just charged all these guys right out of existence, off their position. And now what I would do is flop over to the defensive, right? So I'm set up in line already. So I would immediately kick out skirmishers to shoot the remnants of what is here, right? Get them out of here. Pull some of these units back and form an assault column. and then immediately I would look to grab. Here's a battery right here, right? So I would bring this battery up, put skirmishers in front of them, form the fortress, yada yada yada. This position's secure, right? Basically, all there is to it. All right, so that's one way I accomplish attacks. That's the simplest method. I'm just going for the objective. That's where all the points are, and I'm just because this is a hold objective, and a lot of objectives in this game are hold objectives. The points that you get from these objectives far exceed anything that you would get from combat. So you really just want to get them as quickly uh, as you possibly can, and then secure the position and rack up the points from the objective, rather than being, kind of super strategic about how you actually take the objective. There wasn't a lot of finesse in this. It was just blunt force trauma. It was just, I have 3,500 men and you don't. It's that simple. And I'm just going to run headlong and give you the bayonet. There are a number of reasons why the bayonet charge is the preferred way to attack in this game. And it's very different from the way things were in Scourge of War Gettysburg. So the biggest reason is this quirk of the interface. The fact that certain functions, the double quick, the charge, also retreat works, advance while engaged works, fallback while engaged works. All of that stuff will function from the brigade commander, even if the battalions are under TC. So there's a lot of functions that you can do basically that work at the brigade level, even if your battalions are TC'd like this. About the only one that really matters that doesn't work like this is actually selecting formations. That you have to have the battalions under AI control, because they won't respond to that unless they are under AI control. So, all right, we can get out of this. Okay, so that basically covers rule number 1, which was basically only attack what you absolutely have to attack, and just with the forces necessary to do so. So I made sure I had a superior force, but I didn't go rushing in there with the whole division. It was one brigade, and I attacked the objective I need most in that scenario. That's usually in that scenario, that's the only objective I do go for. It's something like 200 points a minute. It's worth an obscene amount of points for a scenario of that length. So normally I think you only need about 2,500 points to win that scenario. And I usually score 10,000 points because I do that. I bum rush that one objective, take it in the first 15 minutes of the scenario, and then the rest of the time I just sit there camping on the objectives. I set up the fortress, and I rack up an insane amount of points from an objective that's worth like 200 points a minute. So it's a very efficient strategy to do that. Normally, I rescue Bowden's brigade and just pull them away from Hugomont. Usually, I do that while I'm moving Soy's brigade over. Initially, I'll send them over, and then I don't just speed up time. I'll go over and pull Bowden's brigade away from Hugomont to rescue them. But I was just trying to show how I actually execute an attack like that quickly and efficiently. So ironically, that also kind of covers point 2, which is get there versus with the mostest, which is exactly what we did here too. Is just basically rule 1 and rule two kind of overlap each other in that rule 1 is talking about a philosophy, while rule 2 is talking about a strategy. So rule 1 is basically telling you that you don't want to attack everything on the battlefield. You only want to attack what is absolutely essential. So in that scenario, that objective is the essential objective. It's 200 points a minute. It costs up a ton of points. It's all you need to win the scenario. Get it as fast and as quickly and efficiently as possible. While rule number 2 basically tells you how to accomplish that. Right? So rule number 1 says this is what you want to do, and rule number 2 says, and this is how you do it. Right? So what you want to do is take the essential ground, which is the objective in this in that scenario, and in most examples, in most scenarios, the essential ground is the objective. So that's basically what you want to do is take the essential ground, right? Then secure it, flop over the defensive, set up the fortress, blah blah blah. And rule number 2 tells you how to do it. So how do you take the essential ground? Well, you take it by getting there first with the most. So by setting up your attack outside of engagement range, you're preventing the enemy from reinforcing their position because enemy units only respond to proximity in this game. So uh, if you come within an engagement range, that's how you get the enemy to react to you. So you set up the attack outside of that range and then send the attack forward with overwhelming power. So you get there first because you have set up your attack outside of the range that the AI would respond to the attack and strengthen its own position. And then you bum rush the position before they have a chance to basically bring up any support, right? So that's basically kind of what those 2 rules do. Rule 1 says this is what you want to do. Rule 2 says this is how you do it. And my third rule is what was my third rule? My third rule was never accomplish through force what you can accomplish through maneuver. And I think I actually might have some really good video examples of that. So let's resign from the game here. And I'll just turn this off. And maybe what I'll do is just bring up some videos. So let me think of one here. Okay. This might be a good one. Okay, so here's the Lehigh Sant Brigade scenario. I'm just going to pause it and turn the volume all the way down because I do not have the raw videos of these anymore. These are all the ones I uploaded to YouTube, so they all have my commentary. So you would hear me yapping over a video, which would be very hard to understand. So I'm just going to mute all the audio and just kind of fast forward to the example. So I'm trying to hit single player like an idiot. So in this scenario here, let me skip all the talking here. Where are we here? Okay, so in this scenario here, we want to take Lehigh Sant, right? And we have one brigade, Charlet's brigade, to accomplish that. So this is an excellent example of getting what I want through maneuver versus force. So you can see here that this was our objective to take the farmhouse of Lehigh Sant. And clear the orchard, the garden, and occupy the farm buildings. Now, you don't actually need to do that. In this particular scenario, the farmhouse is bugged. Somebody hit one too many zeros, and the objective in this scenario is worth something like 500 points a minute, and you only need 1,000 points for a major victory. So you really only need to hold the house for like 2 minutes, and you have enough points to win. So I think it was supposed to be 50 points a minute. Somebody hit too many zeros, one too many zeros. But regardless, it's defended by some KGL units in the garden here and a couple of other units outside the fort. But we want the fort itself. So if we, I keep trying to close this like an idiot. Okay, so let's advance this a little bit. And okay, so what I'm doing here is I am taking our brigade, Charlet, and you'll notice I've sent them out on the right here, right? This is where I have them positioned, right? Now, are so far out here that you can't even see the units that are in the garden here. I know they're there. I've played this scenario many times. Trust me, they're there, and they will come into view. But what we're doing here is moving out on the right and staying outside of their engagement distance, right? So let's just scroll a little further forward here. Okay, a little further forward. Okay. So what I'm doing here is I split up the brigade, and I haven't split the brigade, but I've just divided them into 2 parts. And what I'm going to do is take 2 battalions, send them out on the extreme right of my position here, basically to the east of Lehigh Sant. There's nobody in Lehigh Sant. And what I'm going to do is quickly, right under the nose of the enemy here, you can see one unit in the garden in the back here. There are a couple other units here, and I think there's one unit on the side here, but there's nobody in the fort. So this goes with my rule number 3. Never take through force what you can take through maneuver. So if we wanted to take this position by force, where we were initially deployed, we would have just charged into the garden uh, and hit, either deployed some skirmishers to shoot these guys out, or just charged in with the brigade and hit the KGL units that would have fallen back into the fort. We would have had to surround the fort with skirmishers, deal with these units. It would have taken a lot longer, and it would have cost us some casualties. But what we're going to do is outmaneuver these forces. So if I keep playing, you'll see that here I'm taking these 2 battalions here, and I'm moving them right out to La Haye Sainte here, and I am taking the other 2 battalions, and I'm kind of going to move them near the orchard, but I am still not going to come within engaged range of them. I'm just putting them in position, because this is what's going to happen. Once I charge in here and take this position, I'm now within reaction range of all of these units. So the units in the orchard here are going to stand up and turn around and start shooting at me, because now I'm in the fort. Setting themselves up for a little right hook, left hook combination here. So once my units are in the fort and these guys stand up and turn around, I'll take these 2 battalions, charge into the orchid, and hit these guys in the rear. So let's just fast forward a little bit more. And okay, at this point you can see here are my boys running into the orchid here. There they go. I've got Charlet moving in. And you can see, now we can see these guys, and they're facing this way. But as soon as I get in here, these guys will turn around. And now you can see these guys starting to react. These guys will start to react. But we're moving too quickly. We're going to beat them into the fort. And they're just reacting now. So they're starting to shoot at us. But we're going to beat them into the fort here. And boom, you can see it actually takes a long time to get into the fort, which is, we were already on the run. These guys would have had to form into assault column, then start moving. They wouldn't have double quicked, and they never would have beat us into the fort. So once we are in the fort here, now I'm anticipating, because I know these guys are going to hear first. These guys have started to turn around, and I'm actually narrating this. That's why we have two little arrows here. 2 little hands here, so I'll stop using the one I'm currently using. But my men are basically almost into the fort now, and we're being shot at. We've only taken 7 casualties, but we've got the objective. We now have the leader moving into the fort. And all of these units are on TC. This is not any kind of interface thing. I'm just moving the battalions one at a time here. I set their destination all manually. I'm not using brigade level commands, because I'm dealing with so few units here. All right, so now these guys have turned their backs to us, and now they're ripe for the plucking. So now you can see I'm just moving each unit individually. We're going to double quick these units. They're very close, and as soon as they come within range, we're going to hit this unit in the flank and just hit these guys. And I'll fast forward, just get the little. Okay, here they come. All right, so these guys are shooting at me in the fort now. We're being shot at by all 3 sides, which is a good way to shoot people out of a fort. So we need to clear this out as fast as possible. So these guys they have no idea what's coming, right? They got set up for it. This was really dirty and really mean. And yeah, okay, they're charging now, but it doesn't matter. We took them from the rear. They're in line. They're getting charged by 2 units versus 1. We have the formational advantage because we are in column by division, and it's just bad news all the way around. And I don't recall, but I would be surprised if this unit even makes it out of here alive. And we're just mashing the charge button. There they go. And they surrender. Okay, so they surrendered. They got the horrible end of it. Now we've got the objective, and we got it. Okay, we can pause this now. We got it without ever firing a shot. I mean, we charged afterwards, but that was a setup. In terms of taking the actual objective, we got it without ever firing a shot, because we outmaneuvered rather than just where we were initially deployed, um, which was basically right in front of this orchid, and just kind of advancing into the orchid like the scenario author thinks you're going to do. Instead, we moved out to the right, avoided the proximity, the range to be triggered of these enemies in the orchid, and just stormed into the fort. There was nobody in there, and in fact, in most of these scenarios, in the center here, that is a big problem with La Haye Sainte, is there's almost never anybody in there. So if you play counter-lance attack, same thing, the same maneuver works. In fact, if you play the entire Battle of Waterloo, uh, you can literally do this in the first 5 minutes of the scenario and just instantly take La Haye Sainte, and start racking up points immediately. It's 100 points a minute, and you have, it's a 9-hour scenario, so just do the math. It's like 54,000 points. So here's an instance of just using maneuver to take an objective. So another good example. Let me see. I believe there was another good one actually in, I believe right at the beginning of this video. Yes. Yes. So right at the beginning of this video, this is the battle of the Safel. This was the last series of videos I did. Um, and as the I just kind of stumbled upon this, but as the Austrians here, as I was advancing on, no, I'm already past what I'm looking for here. Where the hell am I? What am I doing? No. Where am I? Is this not the right video? I'm sorry, guys. I'm totally lost. Part one, part two. Okay. Yes, this should be the right video, but it's near the beginning. Okay, so yeah, I'm confused. Okay, my bad. Okay, so right near the beginning of this video here is where we took Suffolk-Wiersheim. Right? Where is it? Yeah, it's earlier. Okay. Oh no, it was at the end of the last video. Sorry, I'm losing my mind here, guys. I'm sorry. So it was down in here? Yeah. Okay, here we are. So as I advanced on Suffolk-Wiersheim here as the Austrians, you can see my forces here. I realized that I could just, here's the objective, and that there was really nobody defending it. So I could just waltz in there. And here it is. Here's my men. I've moved. There is a French brigade out there, but I am close enough to this objective that I can just, and I've already got some artillery set up, and I'm just going to quickly kick off some skirmishers, I think, and just send them into this objective here. Here I go, right? And take this objective, and we've never fired a shot. So that's another example of this necessarily wasn't maneuver. This was more of a situation that just presented itself. But I want the ground that is valuable to me. So here is the objective. If there's nobody defending it, I am simply going to take it, right? So there's a brigade over here, but they're not within musket range or engage range. So I'm just quickly sneaking some skirmishers in to take this objective. And if this French brigade were to make any move, then I have battalions back here. I could set up a defense along here or whatever. I could immediately intercept them and make sure I maintain control of this objective, right? So we're sending skirmishers in, and it's being a little stubborn with the objective clicking and whatnot in terms of actually getting them to be considered to be in the fort. But I think I get it within, a few minutes here. Okay, so we've got it. We've got the objective. I moved some skirmisher units in. I moved for some a battalion nearby to put the manpower limit for the objective over the threshold of whatever it was to take the objectives. The point is it was uh, super easy to do because I didn't go looking for an enemy to fight. I looked for the ground of value, right? So this is the ground of value because it's the objective, right? So I moved my forces up, but saw the ground that I wanted was not actually defended by anybody. So while I will get into a fight in this area later on, the first thing I want to do is secure the objective, secure the ground of most value to me so that I immediately start racking up points for it. And the fact that the opponent just left this wide open without being defended meant I can basically move my men right up into it without ever firing a shot and taking the objective. Uh, so another good video to show an example of this is, yeah, this is actually a good one. There's a lot of different factors at play in this scenario. So when I played the scenario, and a lot of the later Lasafel videos, um, I, at this point in the game's life, when we got to the later parts of Lasafel, I really wasn't playing the game anymore. I was only playing it to when I was going to make a YouTube video, right? It was basically like I'm playing this scenario to make a YouTube video just for completionist sake. So my channel is complete, my series is complete, and I just wanted to uh, have a video for every single scenario up there. So when I played this scenario, I hadn't actually ever played it before. This was the first time I played it. So I didn't have any kind of overarching strat. It wasn't a strategy that I had previously in terms of I played the scenario many times and this is the same thing I always do. That wasn't the case. I was playing it blind, so I kind of just winged my strategy. But it just happened to be that a lot of cool situations presented themselves uh, uh, in this scenario that really demonstrated a lot of my attack philosophies. So initially, if we just fast forward a little bit here, and I'm still talking about the, come on, where is the, okay, so I'm just going to pause here. So initially, all I knew about this scenario was I have a division, 2 brigades, and some cavalry attached, and these were my 2 objectives. That was all I knew going into this. So the first thing I did is I just want to see what's in front of me. So a relatively safe strategy is just to advance halfway between where I am and where I need to go, right? And form up there, right? Let's advance to this crossroads. Let's see what's in front of us, and then we can move forward in combat formations and advance on these positions and see what's in front of us. So I didn't know, I hadn't played the scenario before, but that was my. It's as simple as it gets. Just I'm here, the objectives are here. Let's advance to halfway between set up in a formation and see what we encounter, right? So play the video. We'll advance a little. We'll advance the timeline a little bit, and you can see we're just marching down the road. And there's not much to do here but give you some cool camera shots. And I just basically grabbed the whole division en masse, gave them a divisional formation, and they all started moving. So as we keep marching down the road here, and you will see at some point I spotted some uh, Austrian or Württemberg cavalry squadrons on the crossroads. So I only saw like 3 or 4 uh, cavalry squadrons. Nothing crazy. So it didn't do anything to make me want to stop my advance here. I saw 3 or 4 squadrons. Nothing to get in a twist about. I got a whole French division, and they're moving off anyway. You can see there's 3 of them. They're moving off, and I'm continuing my advance here. So as we approached further here, we'll just scroll forward. My guns are coming up. The cavalry is continuing to withdraw. and I'm continuing to bring my position up along this crossroads here. More of my forces are now arriving. Right. At this point, most of my force is now up above the crossroads. I'm sending one brigade off to the left, my artillery up the middle, one brigade off to the right, and we're just going to advance. Okay, so at this point now, let me just back up a little bit. I've scrolled forward now. It's light enough out that I can actually see my objectives off in the distance here. So I'm scrolling forward just to take note of what they are. So we have a building here that is one objective, right? We can see one and another. So we have two objectives. They are both They are both buildings, and they're probably garrisoned. I'm too far away. I've just scrolled the camera forward, so I cannot see what forces are here. But I've scrolled forward enough. It's light enough that I can actually see what I'm supposed to be going for here. So the first thing I know is, without any information, because I hadn't played the scenario before, is okay. Both of these objectives are buildings. They are probably garrisoned, and this is probably going to involve encircling these four positions and using skirmishers and so forth to shoot the defenders out, which is a tried and true tactic when it comes to shooting enemies out of a garrison building. The more you surround them, the more sides you surround them on, um, the more you disperse the units inside's firepower among all three sides. So what ends up happening when you do this, you're pressing them ever harder from all three sides, while they are able to return less and less firepower to you, the more sides of the building you surround. I generally do not surround the rear side, even though that would actually disperse their firepower even more so. But generally speaking, I don't do that because uh, you never know what's behind you. And if enemy units, if they have reserves or whatever, and they're coming up from the rear, you're going to get taken from behind. So generally speaking, I usually leave them a way out. So usually, whatever side is basically facing towards their lines, that's the side that I will leave open. I usually at most surround three sides of the building. Two is good, three is better. Three is usually what I'm aiming for. But that's all I knew about the scenario going into it, is that the objectives were garrison buildings, right? And that I was probably going to have to surround them on three sides and shoot them out of here. So at this point, I'm just continuing the advance, right? Here comes my leftmost brigade. Here's my artillery in the center. And then off to the left there, you would have seen my rightmost brigade. So at this point, I'm continuing to move my formations forward. I'm moving my battery forward. At this point, you can see I'm now setting destinations to within range of these objectives. So here's the leftmost one, and the leftmost one was kind of in the haze there. Meanwhile, the Austrian cavalry here has just withdrawn and set up a line. This goes back to my defensive-oriented mindset that I talked about. Only attack what you absolutely need to attack to get what you want accomplished. So this cavalry sitting out here is of no consequence to me. This is not an objective. This is not ground of any importance. I do not need to engage them. Right? So I have more cavalry than they do. They have about 6 squadrons out here. I have about 9. Right? So they're no threat to me. And I have a gun battery. So all I'm going to do here is take my cavalry, set up in line, facing them, set up my guns in front, and just bomb away at them and keep them contained. Right? I'm not going to go and get myself in a cavalry engagement just because, oh, look, there's cavalry out in front of me. Herp derp, I should attack them. That's not the way I think. I don't want to watch this, right? I want to be as minimally involved over here uh, as I need to be, or as I can be, because I want to concentrate on whatever I have to do to take the ground that is of value to me, the two buildings with the objectives. So this is of no consequence to me. So if these guys want to sit out here in line and do nothing but sit here, I am perfectly content to sit 800 yards away, set up my horse battery, and to say, look, get what you're going to get. You guys can shoot at these guys, hit what you're going to hit, and we'll just sit here and have a little hoedown. We'll just stare at each other. And if I need cavalry to accomplish what I need to accomplish later on up by the two buildings, then I'll start siphoning squadrons away from this. But I'm perfectly content to have a standoff here because this is a completely defensive mindset that I have. I'm a defensive player at heart, right? I want to accomplish all I can through maneuver and defense before I ever think about going on the attack. Going on the attack is something that I only do if the scenario says, Rob, we're not leaving you any choice here. If you want this objective, you have to attack it. And I basically have to be dragged kicking and screaming into making an attack because that's not what I want to do, and it's the thing I look to do least because I'm trying to get the ground that I want with the least amount of effort possible. Uh, so carrying an attack is more effort than just walking up to an objective and taking it. Right? We saw how easy it was to just take a couple of battalions and storm into La Hassan versus actually having to coordinate the whole brigade to make an attack in when we just did the King of Westphalia. Uh, Now, obviously, that attack was very brutal, and very fast, and very efficient. My attack strategies absolutely work, but you still have to drag me kicking and screaming into making them. I don't want to attack. I'll only do it if the scenario literally says, nope, we're not giving you any other option. So let's move forward a little more here and see what situation gets presented to us here. All right. So right away, right, as my battalions have advanced further, I have come into some view of some Austrian battalions here. Now, uh, what I realized on the approach here is that both, and they're not all on the screen here, but there's enough here for me to give you the general idea of what's going on here. So this is the rightmost building, and off the screen here is the leftmost building. In various positions, there are 4 Austrian battalions set up in column like this. One here, another one off the screen to the left, and then another one to the right of the building, of the other building, all the way to the left, way out of supporting distance of each other. So I'm just going to play the video here just to see if I get a view of them. So there's the other one, and there's this one, right? So we got the 2 I showed you before, and now this one, and then this one. So as I was advancing, right, my first thought is always, how can I give myself all the advantages and deprive the enemy of those advantages, and deprive the enemy of fighting me on advantageous grounds. So I'm advancing with 2 full brigades, right, one on the left and one on the right, and a battery of artillery. So the first thing I do is I'm going to use a bit of, in this attack, I use a bit of all 3 rules, right? So the first rule is only attack what you absolutely have to attack, right? So I need to get to these buildings. So minimum, these 2 battalions, the one here and the one just off the screen here, are in my way. I have to get rid of those. I have to attack them, right? So only attack what you absolutely have to attack, and only use the forces that you need to absolutely get the job accomplished. So we have 2 brigades, which should be more than enough to accomplish what we're going to accomplish. And the second rule, get there first, is with Moses, right, from Nathan Bedford Forrest. Believe me, we're going to do that because we have two brigades, and we're actually going to use 1 brigade each to take on each one of these battalions. So this one battalion here has to take on 1 whole French brigade, and the other battalion has to take on the other French brigade. And the third rule, which is never take by force what you can take by maneuver. So we want to keep these 2 battalions that are on the outside here, on either side, right? On the outside of the buildings. This one here, and then way off the screen to the left of the other building, there was another one. So because the way engage distances work in this game, really all you need to do to get an enemy unit to go into line and engage you is just stick something in front of them, right? Just something, right? So what I do is just split off 1 battalion from each one of these brigades, and these brigades are huge. If I let me follow the video back here a little bit and see if I can get a picture of my two brigades as they advance here. Okay, so here they are, right? Let me go back there. This is just one. Back up, Rob. See, I'm talking about what I'm just. Okay, here's one brigade. It's enormous, right? So this is my rightmost brigade. It's 6 frickin' battalions. It's absolutely huge, right? More than enough to take care of that one column that we need to charge out of the way. So what I decide to do is just say, you know what? Even with 5 battalions, it's still overwhelming numbers. So I'm just going to split off one battalion, detach them from this brigade, and I'm going to send them all the way out to the right and have them engage those far units. Keep them pinned in position while I deal with the 2 units in the center. Right. So this guy, these are the guys we really want to take, but we're going to engage these 2 units first to pin them in place, force them to go into line and engage us, right? So, and this is literally a plan I just winged. Like I made this up on the approach as I saw how these guys were deployed, uh, because I'm following my rules, right? And this is what my rules say. My rules say only attack what I have to attack. I have to attack those 2 middle battalions because they're going to stop me from trying to surround these buildings. I don't have to attack these 2 because they're out of position. But I do need to keep them engaged to keep them from moving into position to then make themselves a pain in the butt, right? So that was the overall plan. So again, I'm following all 3 of my little rules, right? In that I'm attacking only what I need to attack. I'm going to make sure that I hit those 2 center columns with overwhelming force, so I get there first with the most. You can see these brigades are enormous. They're just, and each one of them only has to tangle with one. Yeah, these 2 columns. So this is just unfair in the highest. But I'm gonna detach a unit from each brigade and send them to pin these far outside units here right where they are and engage them so that I can go right up the center here, knock these guys out of the way like bowling pins, and then proceed to surround the buildings, right? So let's go forward here. And I'm just playing around. Okay, so at this point, my units are almost in position here. So let's watch what I'm going to do here. So, okay, rightmost unit, and you'll notice I'm detaching them, right? Minus key. And I'm sending them right out here, and I'm going to just position them in line. I'll kick off some skirmishes from them and put them in the tree line just to pin these bozos in position. And you can see my battery, half of it has, here comes the rest of them. They're unlimbering. What are they going to do? They're going to soften up those central columns. So now I'm bringing combined arms into it. In that I'm bringing my guns up to soften those columns up as if they really needed to be, right? I mean, I'm going to hit them with an entire brigade. They don't need to be softened up, but what can I say? I'm ruthless. I take every advantage I can get. And I'm going to do the same thing with this battalion. They are detached, and I'm going to send them to engage. So let's just fast forward a little bit. And a little more. And I'm moving the brigades up into just a little more forward position. And we're almost here. We're almost in position. Alrighty, so I'm going to just kick off because I'm not looking to get into a real engagement here. All I'm looking to do is make these guys form line and start shooting at me. Right, so I'm just going to use skirmishers and I'm going to position them far away, max musket range, 145, 150 yards. Right, I'm not looking to beat these guys. I'm not looking to win a firefight or even have much of a firefight. At 150 yards, not much is going to be accomplished, but it doesn't matter. That's not the point of what I'm doing. The point of what I'm doing is by forcing these guys to engage, there they go. They're now forming line and they're going to engage 2 little 100-man skirmish units. So this is probably a 700 or 800-man battalion, and I'm pinning them in position and taking them, for all practical purposes, I'm taking them out of the battle because now they're completely out of position to help with what I'm really trying to do, which is go barreling up through the center here. And I'm going to do the same thing over here, right? Just deploy some skirmishers. right? And I'm just going to move them up. And here initially, I moved them up a little too close. I should have probably kept them right around here, or back here. They're too close. They're like 80 yards. So I wanted to make sure I triggered these guys into line, but I should have backed these guys off. I do it. I do eventually. Don't worry about it. But the point is I've gotten these two units to basically force these. This is 800 men, and I'm holding them up with 200 men. You know, and forcing them to engage in a worthless firefight. Look at this. This is 156 yards. That's out of musket range, but I need to move them in a little bit just to get them close. These guys are at 120 yards, so way outside the real maximum effective range of muskets. So not much is going to come of this, but they're pinned in place and they are uh, not going to move. They're just going to sit here shooting. And I really don't want to get in a serious firefight because, well, that could cause them to fall back if they get the worst of it, and then they might move and help out the fort later on. I want to keep these guys engaged and have kind of minimal casualties on both sides because it's really just about pinning them in place while I roll up the center here with these two brigades and just Hulk smash these guys. And same thing over here now. God, look at all these cursors between the initial when I made the YouTube video, this now, and then while I'm playing the game, there's like all these cursors flying around the screen. Um, but yeah, that's basically the idea here. So let's see how this progresses here. So now we've got the skirmishers, and at this point, I think we're going to, yes, here we go. We're moving them just like I showed you before. Move the brigade up, form assault column, and then I'll immediately TC them, and we'll do the same over here. And I'm just backing these skirmishers up. So let's just fast forward again. Okay, so yep, just advancing in column by division, just like we just did in King of Westphalia. Everything is TC'd. I selected the formation with them off TC, very close to the unit, and then immediately placed them all on TC. And we'll fast forward a little bit again. So now these guys are the ones that were softened up by the artillery a lot, so I never get a chance to charge them because they break and run right now. So I didn't get a chance to charge them. They simply withdrew. And at this point, this brigade is now free to move to the fort and surround them. However, these guys don't. So let's fast forward a little bit more. And okay, so just like I just did to those British battalions in the King of Westphalia, this battalion is now forming line. We're very close. They're probably not going to be able to get too many shots off. I've TC'd all my battalions, and I'm going to march right up to them and just start mashing away on the charge button here. Watch it go here. So as soon as the first couple of battalions reach their position, I don't want them to form line, so there it goes. We break into a charge. The whole brigade charges, and obviously it's a foregone conclusion. This is one battalion being charged by an entire French brigade. Off they go. All right, so this battalion is broken because they suffered so many artillery casualties that they've basically fallen back and broken. This unit is now retreating, and now both brigades here. This one is free to deal with surrounding this building, and the leftmost one is free to deal with surrounding the other building on the Austrian right, while the two outermost units are still being held in place by those units that I detached, and they're basically completely out of position and out of the battle. So now at this point, I would go into my fort strategies, which is I don't need to make a video on fort strategies because it's real simple. Surround the building on all three sides, use skirmishers, put your line units right behind the skirmishers, and surround that on as many different sides as you can. That's kind of all there is to taking out forts. It's just surrounding them and shooting them and surrounding them as on two or three sides. Two is good, three's the best. Like I said, I usually don't do four because then I'm basically Unless I really know there's no other enemy nearby, then I might do it. But generally speaking, 3 is more than enough. Put skirmishers at about sweet distance is about 100 yards, 90 to 100 yards. So I will put skirmishers at 90 to 100 yards on the perimeter of the fort, and I'll put the line units wherever I put the skirmisher units. I'll put the line units literally right behind them. So if the skirmisher units are 90 yards away, the line units will be 95 yards away, right behind them, because the skirmisher units are screening them. And that way I'm pouring both the skirmisher fire and the line fire into the fort, and I'm dispersing the uh, uh, garrison strength on all 3 sides, so they're not able to as effectively return fire. Uh, and that's basically my strategy here. If I scroll forward a little more, you can see that I'm starting to do that now. This Prussian unit here has regrouped, so I'm going to move this unit on the flank and just surround these guys. But you'll quickly see how I start to do this. So over here, you can see I've got a French unit on the left. I've got a unit on the right, skirmishers, and I'm just spreading out and encircling the fort on as many different sides as possible. And I'm just playing games with positioning right here. And we've already taken this fort. You see how quickly it works when you surround them on all 3 sides. We've already taken this one. Where I'm just looking to see what's going on with the left. I keep coming back to the the rightmost one. So here's some reinforcements, and we've already taken it. So obviously I fast forwarded past it. So okay. So here we basically have my complete setup for how I would take out a fort. So you'll notice I have skirmisher units surrounding the fort on all 3 sides, and I have line units behind the skirmisher units, and I'm pouring fire into all 3 sides, and you can see that very quickly the units run out. So that is one example of kind of how you can apply all 3 of my kind of rules for the attack in one. I think I'm just going to go with maybe one last example, and let me see if I can think of a good one here. So sorry, I just banged my microphone. So I actually think the Eagle Triumphs has a really good one, but it may take some doing to find it. I think that's right at the beginning of part 3 here. Okay, so here we go. Let me back up a little bit. I'm right here. Okay. So here's the ground we want, right? This is the objective. And you can see there's a formidable defense here, right? Now, there are 2 things. The first 2 things I notice is while there is a formidable defense here, the objective is actually out in front of them. But it's not so far out in front of them that I can just take it and then just sit there and collect it. There's artillery right here, infantry squares, cavalry. I'm going to have to come up with a real juicy plan here to outmaneuver the Prussians of this objective, right? So basically, what I do here, it's a form of kind of rules 1 and 3 apply here. A little bit of 2, right? So 1 is only attack what you absolutely need to attack. There's a lot of Prussians out here, right? But this is the only thing I really want. I want the objective. I don't care about defeating all the Prussians. I just want the objective. That's the ground of value. So how can I get it? How can I get it quickly and efficiently? And then how can I secure it, right? So what I come up with is basically in In chess, we would call this a sacrifice. So what a sacrifice is in chess is when you sacrifice a piece to gain a positional advantage. And sometimes that can mean sacrificing a good piece, right? So, uh, some of the greatest chess victories in history have involved things like players sacrificing their queens. And for those of you that don't play chess, the queen is the most powerful piece on the board, right? Uh, in theory, the queen is the most powerful piece on the board because the queen can move up or down, left or right, diagonal. It basically is a rook, a knight, and not sorry, not a knight. It's a rook and a bishop, kind of all in one, right? So you combine a rook, you combine a bishop, you get a queen, right? So in theory, it's the most powerful piece on the board. In practice, what is the most powerful piece on the board? The most powerful piece on the board is the one that gets you the win, right? So that's in practice. In theory, all things being equal, the queen is the most powerful piece. But in any one particular game, the piece that gets you the win is really the most powerful piece, right? Or combination of pieces. So sometimes, if sacrificing the theoretical most powerful piece will actually yield you the win, then one, it was still the most powerful piece because the sacrifice was integral to you winning. And uh, two, whatever piece you actually use to then cinch the win becomes the most powerful piece. So what I need to do first is there is no way you can hold a position like this so close to enemy guns. So through process of elimination, the guns have to go. They're the first thing that has to go, right? I can figure out anything else after the fact, but I cannot sit here within canister range of a full Prussian 8-gun heavy battery. That's a no-no, right? So regardless, the battery has to go. So how do I do that? How do I get rid of the battery when it's defended by uh, a big cavalry brigade in rear, as well as some infantry squares? Well, fortunately, they are not set up like the fortress, right? Because if they were, then we'd have a problem. Uh, but they're not. The squares are actually what's out of position here, right? So if the squares were set up right, they would be right on one square would be right on top of the objective here, forward of the guns, and the other would be, of course, be out here, forward of the guns. And then we'd be in trouble because the fortress is tough to beat. Quick side note here before we get into this one last example. Occasionally, people have asked me because getting back to my previous video on the fortress, have asked me uh, because I've said many times in many videos that the fortress is the most powerful formation in the game, and it is. Um, and people have asked me, Rob, could you crack the fortress? And the answer to that is yes and no. So I would have to say, um, first, theoretically, I've never had to because the AI doesn't use the fortress. So um, I have never actually had to engage the fortress. But at the same token, there's probably no one else alive that understands the fortress like I do, because obviously I created it. So I've commented many times about its strengths and how to harness its strengths, a little less about its weaknesses. I don't talk too much about its weaknesses. It does have some. And needless to say, I probably know more about what the fortress's weaknesses are than probably any other player alive. So theoretically speaking, if I was playing against some other player that was, say, a fan of my channel and knew how to use the fortress, if you ask me that question and say, Rob, if you were playing one of your viewers, say, that has been a long time fan of your channel, and they were using the fortress against you, could you crack it? The answer to that is yes, I could crack it because I know things about the fortress that they don't. and I would know how to crack it in ways that they've just never seen. So yes, I could crack it against a player that knows how to use the fortress in terms of what they've picked up from my channel, but I know things about it they don't that I've never talked about, and because it's not necessary, because the AI would never do the things that I know how to do, so it's not necessary for a player to know those type of things to defend against the AI. But there are things that I just know about the fortress that players that are viewers of my channel and that learned how to use the fortress from watching my videos would not know. And so, yes, I would know how to break down the fortress against that type of player. The real question is, Rob, could you break the fortress if you were playing yourself? That is to say, if I could clone myself and even clone the version of me that exists right now and have me play myself with the equal amount of knowledge that I have now. And one Rob is the attacking force, and one Rob is on the defense playing the fortress. Could I then crack the fortress? The answer to that is no, because that Rob on the defense would know the same weaknesses of the fortress that I know, and he would know how to counter them just as I do. And ultimately, the statement that I've made is that the fortress is the best formation in the game is true. It cannot be broken. So if you were to take me, clone me, and have me defend against myself, the Rob making the attack would fail. He would not break the fortress because the Rob playing the fortress would know how to counter uh, uh, anything that he tries to do to break up the fortress, because he knows the same things, the same weaknesses about it that I know. So saying that I could beat another player that's using the fortress is not to say the fortress is not the best formation in the game. It is. I would only be able to do it because that player would not know the things about the fortress that I do. But under all things being equal, playing a version, a copy of myself, then no, the fortress could not be broken. It's impregnable for all practical purposes. And anyone that thinks they could do it, uh, show me how, because I don't it can't be done as far as I know. It cannot be done, and I would venture to say that there's nobody out there. One, this is a very niche game. There aren't a lot of people out there that are left playing it to begin with. And two, most people that do still play it don't bother with tactics like this because they're not realistic tactics anyway. So it's very unlikely there's anyone out there who has studied the fortress like I have. But anyway, that was just a brief diversion. But yes, I could crack the fortress against somebody else using it against me. No, I could not crack it if it was a clone of me using it. So what I came up with to oust the Prussians here and gain control of this objective. If I back up here for a second here, and I'm hoping that there is that I just pull the camera back here a second. Okay, that was terrible. What kind of camera sweep was that? All right, here we are at ground level, and you can see here's the squares, here's the battery, we're at ground level. I have the young guard out here set up in square, and the reason I have them set up in square is because there's cavalry nearby. I also have my own cavalry nearby, and up on a ridge I have a whole bunch of artillery. So if we fast forward again and pick up, here we have, what I decide to do is say I am going to sacrifice one cavalry brigade. And I'm going to sacrifice them to take this battery. The battery is what has to go. Now, I know my cavalry is going to get countercharged by the Prussians that are right behind the battery. As soon as my cavalry brigade hits these guns and takes them, they're going to immediately get countercharged by the Prussian cavalry, and my forces are going to be all disorganized after capturing all the guns, and the Prussian cavalry is actually outnumbers my cavalry. They're immediately just going to wallop my cavalry. So how does that gain me the position? Well, it doesn't. All I've done is gotten rid of the guns, but that's step one, right? Um, what I do is while I'm advancing the cavalry, I'm going to advance the young guard, uh, or guys. I'm sorry, guys brigade of the young guard. So one brigade of the young guard, right? And I'm going to advance them behind the cavalry, so they're safe. They can move and not be in square because my cavalry is between the Prussian cavalry and Guy's brigade. And I'm going to move them right up to this position and have them form up in square. And I time this so that as the counterattack begins, so the guns are gone now. I've taken the guns with my cavalry, right? And as the counterattack begins, Guy's brigade is finishing setting up in square. So what does this do for us? Well, one, it gains us the position. Now we've moved up. We're occupying the objective. The guns are gone, so we can't be bombed away on. And the Prussian cavalry that is countercharging my cavalry, well, my cavalry is going to fall back behind the squares where where the Prussian cavalry cannot pursue them. So they're still going to get mollywopped. It is a sacrifice. A lot of the cavalry brigade that I send to take these guns is going to get really handled roughly by the Prussian cavalry. But I've moved the Guy's brigade up into this position and gotten a foothold on it. And now all the Prussians, the guns are gone. All the Prussians have is cavalry, right? And they're going to countercharge my cavalry, but they can only go so far with it because my squares are now in position. So I'm going to advance the video, and I'll even bring the sound up on the video so you can hear my original commentary, which probably better describes the plan than what I'm doing now, because it's actually been a long time since I looked at this video, and some of the details are just hazy for me. But I just remember that this was a really kind of clever sacrifice chess style attack. So let me see if I can find where the advance begins here, and I will then transfer to my commentary. Okay, so here you can see the cavalry moving up into position. And at this point, I think I'll just let the video play out here, and I'll bring my commentary up to describe what's going on here. All right, guys. The squares will advance to occupy the objective behind the cavalry. When the cavalry gets countercharged, um, they'll have the squares to fall back behind, and that will effectively stop the Prussian cavalry from pursuing them. At that point, we can bring up our guns. We still have our other cavalry brigade, so the loss of this one cavalry brigade, even that, I forget how beat up they get in the countercharge, because, like I said in part one of this series here, I did this playthrough at the same time I did the playthrough of the old Fox Fights Back. So it was literally weeks ago, and I don't remember every single detail of what happened in this playthrough. But I remember the general idea here. I definitely remember what I was thinking here. And I realized that a sacrifice was in order here. And that really the paramount importance was to get those guns. So you can see I'm starting to move the young guard up in squares, and I'm getting the last of my cavalry in position here, and we're going to charge and take those guns. Now, the Prussian infantry is in square as it is, so I'm not worried about moving the young guard forward in square against Prussian infantry because they're also in square. Really, I'm moving them forward in square to act as a wall for my cavalry to fall back behind once they get countercharged, so that they can't keep being pursued by the Prussian cavalry. But all this really hinges on my cavalry getting these guns before they get countercharged. So we're going to charge kind of through the woods here and come out and double quick and hopefully take these guns out before we get countercharged. All right, guys, just cutting in for a second here. This is present me cutting in on past me. So at this point, right, we've set our cavalry squadron, our cavalry brigade, to basically do a headlong charge against the guns here. And we want to take all these guns. And you'll notice I position them So that there's no chance of me accidentally charging these squares or charging this cavalry. I set them up so that even the rightmost squadron here is going to charge cannon. So most of these squadrons here, maybe not this one, but most of these squadrons here are going to charge the guns and not anything else. Because if you recall what I said in the fortress video, you cannot specify what it is you want your units to charge. It's a distance thing. They simply charge whatever is closest to them. So by moving them, positioning them to be really close to the guns, I'm ensuring that when I do hit the charge button here, that's what they charge. They charge the guns and not something else. So if I had taken the brigade commander here and maybe put him here, and the formation was set up more like from here to here, then you might have some of these squadrons running off and trying to charge the square because I'm mashing the charge button, so I'm going to be forcing the issue, which could force them to charge a square and get murdered, or worse, charge a squadron and activate all this Prussian cavalry back here. So by setting them up like this, I'm basically ensuring that most of this brigade has nothing to charge but guns. All right, so back to past me. So if we can get these guns, then it will be safe to move the infantry forward into square and occupy this objective. So here we go. It's game on, game time. My cavalry is advancing. Cutting in one more time, guys. You'll notice I double-clicked very far away. That's because this is cavalry. You run a lot further with cavalry than you can with infantry. Their fatigue does not sap from double clicking anywhere near as quick as infantry. So I want to close this gap as quickly as possible. Canister is, it's no fun to take. I love firing it. I don't like taking it. So I want to close this to charge range as quickly as possible. All right, back to past me. We have 671 men. I'm sure we're outnumbered by the Prussian cavalry. You can see they're already switching positions here. So we're taking some canister fire as we approach. However, cavalry moves forward much quicker than infantry. So cutting in again here, guys. You can see I am hovering over the charge button. Right, I'm just waiting for these guys to pull up in their position, and I'm just going to start mashing away and taking these guns as quickly as possible. Remember, mashing the charge button means you keep charging over and over again. We want to get all these guns. We don't want to miss any. I think I actually do miss one or two, but I do follow-up charges with what few squadrons escape the Prussian countercharge here, and we are able to either get them all or drive them off. Here we go. The Prussian cavalry is forming into line and getting ready to countercharge us, but we are charging the guns. So we've taken 2 canister shots already. All right, so we're starting to capture the guns. The Prussian cavalry is advancing, and we are about to get countercharged here. So, okay, we've captured at least, looks like 6 of the guns. Cutting in again, guys. Okay, at this point now, the initial charge is over. We have captured 6 out of 8 guns. There's still one here, and there is still one here. So we still need to get these 2 guns out of here, because even 1 or 2 guns, canister fire, can be deadly, and we need all of these guns out of here before we can secure this position. Now, all the while this is going on, don't forget, Guy's brigade of the Young Brigade is moving forward into this position up here, and they're going to form square. So this Prussian counterattack here is going to go very badly for me, for the French cavalry here. They're going to get mollywopped and immediately start withdrawing. But we're going to bring the Young Guard up in square so that once my cavalry squadrons fall behind it, the Prussian cavalry basically cannot pursue. And back to past me. There's still 2 on the outside there, but we have been countercharged now, and what a mess. All right, so we're going to see if we can take these last 2 gun positions on the right here. So you can already see some of my cavalry is being forced to fall back. having been countercharged by the Prussian cavalry. Some of them are falling back as well. We're being pursued on the left here. So part two now is let's bring the young guard up into position of the objective here, and I'm double clicking them. So it looks like we got most of the guns. I do see one Prussian cannon trying to move off over here. However, the Prussian cavalry most definitely got the better of us. We're still in a melee over here. We're in a melee over here. One of our units surrendered, I think. So our cavalry really got beat up by the Prussians, but they did capture most of those guns. However, we will get the young guard set up in square here. Cutting in again here. Now, I'm already thinking ahead. I know I'm going to need artillery to secure this position. So I'm bringing a battery up. I'm getting them moving now because they're relatively far away back on that ridge there. But I'm bringing them up behind these squares because they're safe back here. The Prussian cavalry will not be able to get to them. This is not the fortress or anything, but as you can see, all I would need to do is basically move this one square out of here, move these guns up, and you got a fortress right here, or the outlines of it. So it'd be very quick to just from a standard brigade square formation here to just zip one square out of the way here from the rear, and these two are basically set up right in position where I could then bring the guns up and start getting a fortress-like formation assembled here. And again, back to past Rob here, and we now have control of the objective. All right, so there is a cannon, and there is a Prussian squadron that is about to charge one of our units here. However, our squares are now in, we've now captured the objective, as you can see, or we have possession of the objective, I should say. And the Prussians are just running our... And as you can see, 404 losses to 200 losses. We definitely got our butts kicked there as far as our cavalry goes. But as I said, it was a sacrifice. We got the guns, and once we got the guns out of there, it's safe to then move the squares into the position. And as you can see, we have occupied the objective. That's the ground we wanted. So from here, at this point now, I can just tell you what will happen. Our cavalry is basically, our brigade is pretty much routed, but there's not much more the Prussian cavalry can do. I take the other brigade of the Young Guard and just send them out to the left here to stop the Prussian cavalry here from getting around. I just set up a couple of squares here real quick just to secure my left, and then I start moving the guns up. I send out, I don't use skirmishers because there's really nothing but cavalry here, and these squares are no threat. There's only two. Most of what's out here is cavalry. So I don't use skirmishers. I just set up squares on the objective, get some guns up there, and that pretty much secures me the objective. You can see I had already occupied it. So that was a bit of a sacrifice. But again, my rules still applied to that attack. I only attacked what I absolutely needed to attack. What did I need to attack? I needed to get the guns out of there because I can't sit here and square with artillery that close. They'll destroy me. So the guns are what had to go, and that's all I actually attacked. I did so knowing that my cavalry brigade would be repulsed. The important part is that they captured the guns first before being repulsed. I knew after that I could just set up in square and the Prussian cavalry would be able to only repulse my cavalry brigade, and then they could go no further because I have the squares here. Once I had the objective, once I have the squares, I know, okay, I can bring up the guns, establish artillery dominance, and start blowing these squares apart, start shooting at this cavalry, and there's nothing they can do about it because I've gotten rid of their guns. And then over time, we'll just weaken these squares, they'll run away, shoot at these, they'll run away, we'll establish dominance. And, if you're interested in seeing how this whole scenario plays out, it's an exciting scenario. It's called the Eagle Triumphs. It's the full battle of Ligny from the French side. It's one of my favorite scenarios in the game, and forget what episode it was. I think it's 32. But yeah, it's a long battle. It's 7 hours long, so it's four parts. So there's part one, part two, part three, and part four. This is the beginning of part three we're looking at right here. So quite a bit of the battle has already taken place when we get to this part. But I do encourage you to watch it. It's a really good scenario. Um, but at any rate, those are some of my attack strategies. Uh, Basically, every situation is different, which is why I tried to show you a whole bunch of just very different situations, from situations that are just a straight bum rush like King of Westphalia, to situations that are pure maneuver like the center at Waterloo around La Haye, and just getting the fort, which is not occupied. You just it's just maneuver. You're just walking around the enemy. Um, to something like divide and conquer, like we saw in the Bloody Morning scenario that we were looking at before this, where I basically pinned those two outside units in place while I rolled up the center with overwhelming force. And here we used a little bit of everything, a little bit of maneuver, a little bit of a sacrifice, but we're always adhering to those three rules. We're always adhering to only attack what you absolutely have to. We're always adhering to get there furthest with the mostest. Now, in this instance, you may say, well, Rob, you didn't get there furthest with the mostest. Your cavalry was repulsed. Yes, it was, but it got there furthest with the mostest as far as taking what we wanted to take, which was the guns. Right, the guns had no chance against a brigade-level cavalry charge. They were just screwed from the get-go. Yes, my cavalry brigade was then repulsed, but I knew that was going to happen. It was a conscious sacrifice. I sent this cavalry brigade forward knowing they would be repulsed. That's why we brought the squares up, because the squares basically stop the retreat from the repulse from becoming a rout, because the Prussians can only pursue so far. Again, yes, it may seem like you were repulsed, Rob, so you didn't get there first with the mostest. But yes, I did, because I wasn't trying to. The repulse was consequential, not what I was trying to accomplish. As far as what I was trying to accomplish, which was taking the artillery battery, I absolutely got there with the mostest. Um, and as far as never take through force what you can take through maneuver, how did we take the objective? Right? We maneuvered Guy's brigade into position to take that objective, but Guy's brigade never fired a shot. Right? They were screened by the cavalry. Right? So all three rules were in place when making this attack. And the thing about those three rules is I have never encountered a situation, despite the fact that over the course of this video, I showed you three or four drastically different types of attacks. Those three rules apply in every single situation, right? I may focus on one or the other, or the other to more of an extent than the other two, depending on the situation. But they are always in effect, and those three rules basically guide my philosophy on the attack. That isn't to say the strategies are different, or the tactics I use aren't different from situation to situation. And those are so varied that I could probably never cover all of them in one video, because every situation is different. But by following those three rules, um, and always adhering to that as your core philosophy on the attack, uh, it will basically always force your brain to come up with strategies and tactics that adhere to those principles. How can I take the ground that I need with a minimum amount of effort and the most efficiency and the most guarantee that it's going to succeed? And then always with the philosophy that once I do take that ground, my attack is done, at least as far as this area is concerned. Once I take that objective, if you want it back, enemy, it's up to you, because I'm not pushing any further than I absolutely have to. So I take this objective, I bring the squares up, I set the guns up, and I tank. And I set up the fortress, and I say, Now it's on the Prussians. You want this back? Come and get it. And that plays right into my defensive mindset, right? So again, that goes back to rule one. Only attack what you absolutely have to. I'm not trying to drive through to Bry back here, right? I'm not trying to engage all this cavalry back here, all these guns back here, whatever else the Prussians have back here. It's not what I'm interested in. It's inconsequential ground to me. I wanted one objective, this one. And with one cavalry brigade and one brigade of infantry, I got it, right? So minimal amount of force, just what I needed to accomplish the mission, and minimum amount of mess. Carried it out as efficiently as possible to capture the objective. Yes, I sacrificed one cavalry brigade, but it was worth it. It was absolutely worth it. What did it cost me? 200 points? Please, you know how much? You know how much this? Well, this objective is actually not worth that much, but the whole reason I had to open this objective, you'd have to watch the whole the whole series of videos on this battle to see what I was actually the overall strategy to it. But uh, the point is this is the ground that is consequential. I took it, uh, and all three rules were in effect, just as they were in all the other situations. So I mean, I could keep going and finding more and more examples of different types of attacks, but I could go on forever. I could go on forever, and I think that I've covered, four drastically different styles of attack from the brute force of King of Westphalia to just the maneuvering that we used in La Haye Sainte, as well as uh, uh, La Cefale, the divide and conquer of Bloody Morning, and the chest sacrifice of the Eagle Triumphs here, I think, are generally good examples of some of the ways I attack. And you'll notice that no matter how big the scenario, this is an army scenario right here. I mean, 80,000 men on each side. The scenario is absolutely huge, and it's 7 hours long. But most of my attacks are like this. Most of my attacks are pinpoint attacks using, at most two brigades. What did we really see? In King of Westphalia, I used one brigade. In Bloody Morning, I used two brigades and an artillery battery. Here, I used one brigade of infantry and one brigade of cavalry. Small scale attacks. I accomplish a little at a time, and then I'll secure this position and move on to the next objective. As it turns out, this was the last objective in a series of objectives during this scenario before the big money objective opened up that I really wanted to get. But if you were to watch this whole video on the Eagle Triumphs, you would see that that's basically what I do. I attack one objective, secure it. Attack the next objective, secure it. Attack the one after that, secure it. Uh, uh, Same thing, a little bit at a time. Generally speaking, the bigger the scenarios, the longer they are. So yes, the Eagle Triumphs is an enormous scenario covering, the entire Battle of Ligny, 80,000 men on a battlefield that's probably, 4 or 5 miles long. You say, Rob, how can you possibly watch all of that when you know, TC everything the way you do? Well, because I'm doing it in segments. I'm not handling 80,000 men at one time. I'm attacking one objective, securing the position. So the line, you set up the fortress, and it basically monitors itself, just like I showed you guys in the previous video on the fortress. And then I move on to the next objective. By breaking battles up into a series of smaller engagements like that, you actually can control 80,000 men by TCing them, because you're not trying to do it all at once. You're doing a little bit at a time, and as the scenario takes shape and you secure one position after another and set up your defenses, the way I set up defenses, obviously, as I showed, they largely monitor themselves and they discourage attacks. Just the thought of approaching them is terrifying for the enemy. So they don't, and it becomes at that point pretty easy to watch 80,000 men. So But I think these are pretty good examples of some of the attack strategies I use. Again, one of the key things that I do is just remember these three things when it comes to the toolbar. One, uh, TC everybody, right? Take your brigade commander. Make sure the battalions or the squadrons in this instance are not TC'd when you set the formation, the assault column, or whatever you're always going to charge an assault column basically, unless it's cavalry on cavalry, then you'd use line. But you set the assault column right near the enemy. Once they start moving and they've accepted their position, the destination shows up on the screen. TC all subordinates, and they'll all go under your control, and they'll move. They don't stop following the last order you gave them. So you give them that formation order right near the enemy. They'll keep following it. You TC them. When they come within range where they can be fired upon from the brigade commander, hit double quick. They'll start running. And then when they get to within 20, 30 yards, break into a full charge and just mash away, and you'll just clear everything out in front of you. And then sort out the mess afterwards. You know, take the position, and then once just mash everything you can. Get rid of everything you can that's in front of you until either everything in front of you retreats, or you have no more targets, or your troops become too fatigued, which is winded. You can, when you reach winded, you can no longer charge, and then establish your position. You know, take them off TC, re-TC the brigade commander, set up in line or square or assault column in a position along whatever ground you've captured, and then just start setting up your defense. So get whatever you have to out of the way with a brute force charge, and once you do that, you'll make a mess. But then once it's over, then sort out the mess, because all you need to do to sort out the mess is just basically take the brigade commander, um, uh, un-TC him, re-TC him immediately because you don't want him doing his own thing. So un-TC all subordinates, retake command of the brigade commander, position him wherever you want the brigade to position, select a formation, and then just TC all, and they'll move regardless of the mess they're in. If you set a formation and then instantly TC all subordinates, they'll move to the position you want, and that's how you keep control of your forces amidst the chaos. Um, and Anyway, guys, I think that kind of covers it for my basic ideas on the attack, with some varied examples of some various attacks that I've made throughout the series of the videos that I've done as well. I did a live one for you with the King of Westphalia there, which was not too pretty. It wasn't my most graceful attack, but I hadn't played the game in like 3 months. Give me a break. It still got the job done. It wiped everything off and we took the objective. But anyway, I wanted to make this video to kind of complete my little strategies and tactics series. Maybe I'll make a playlist for it. But largely speaking, guys, I think that's it for Scourge of War Waterloo. The forums are dead. Nobody's really talking about Scourge of War Waterloo anymore. I don't know if there's any further mods in progress for, like the Le Saint-Jour mod. I have no idea. I haven't heard anything. It is dead as dead can be on the Normsoft forums. There's literally like not a peep about anything happening for the future of this game. I understand the game is 5 years old. No one could have milked uh, this game or gotten as much out of this game, I think, as I have in 5 years of playing it. But largely speaking, I think the sun is largely set on this game. It's going down, and dusk is transitioning to night for this game. So I think this pretty much wraps up everything I could possibly add uh, to Scourge of War Waterloo. I've covered pretty much everything there is to cover. It's all in here at some point now. So you have a little series on strategies and tactics. You have uh, all my videos on how to beat every scenario that's ever been made for this game. You have the Grok Toolbar series to learn how to use the intricacies of the toolbar and all the buttons. And hopefully that's enough to give every player the tools they need to become a god at this game, like I have. Um, but yeah, I think that's pretty much it, guys. So I think for the last time, I just want to say for everyone that has subscribed to this channel and gotten something from it, learned something from it. Um, even if it was just one trick or one situation or one scenario that you found me to learn how to beat or to learn how to use the toolbar, just any reason that anybody ever could have had to check out one of my videos, I'm thankful for all of you. And I guess that's pretty much all there is to say. But like I said, I think this is pretty much the end for Scourge of War Waterloo, guys. I do hope Norbsoft someday comes out with another war game. They've been quiet for months now. I really don't know. I don't have an answer. Um, but I hope so because they're my favorite developer. But anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. And I normally end by saying I'll see you guys next time. But unless something new happens for Scourge of War Waterloo, uh, this is it. So goodbye, guys. Have a good one.